Good morning, New Zealand. Well, it was Mother's Day yesterday, and believe it or not, the Minister for Women can't actually define woman. Yep, we found that out late on Friday afternoon. I'll tell you more about it. Welcome to Daybreak. Good morning, it is Monday, start of a new week, 12th of May. Hope you had a great weekend, hope you had a great Mother's Day and honoured all our wonderful mums. We actually received documentation late on Friday night. That tends to be when the government releases stuff that they don't really want people to know about, although the media don't want to know about this issue anyway. They talked about women all last week around pay equity, but when we put out a media release saying that the government doesn't know how to define what a woman is, the media went quiet. How surprising. But you might remember that we submitted a petition, 23,500. You may have signed it, asking for the definition of woman to be made clear in all our laws and our regulations. And we finally got a response. So it went to a select committee. The select committee sent it to the Minister for Women, Nicola Grigg, I think it is. And basically it came back saying, well, yeah, we're not really going to do anything here because the Law Commission are already considering something around human rights. Now, the Law Commission are considering something, but the Law Commission are considering something about people who are transgender, people who are non-binary, and people with innate variations of sex characteristics. In other words, it's not actually a Law Commission paper specifically on women. So the Minister for Women doesn't want to define what a woman is. And of course, we had the UK Supreme Court case that came out. The government has plenty that they could come in behind and say, there's the justification, let's go back to biology. And so it just makes New Zealand First bill that Jenny Marcroft has submitted, the legislation definitions of woman and man amendment bill. It makes that even more urgent. But it's interesting. Mother's Day and the Minister for Women doesn't actually want to define what a woman is. And the media were very quiet. You probably never even heard about that, and that is typical. Interestingly, though, in the New Zealand Herald on Sunday, there was a wonderful op-ed by the lifestyle and travel editor, Jenny Mortimer. I just want to read a few excerpts from it. It says, "I regret pursuing my career and not being a more present mother. There's a lot of shame that comes with that confession, but it's one that sat heavy on my heart for the past few years." She says she's a mum of a now 5-year-old boy. She said, "I didn't want anyone to think I didn't take my job seriously or couldn't do it. I wish I'd dropped the ball though and just basked in being his mum for a minute. Work took priority." She then says later on, "Because the truth is careers, obviously within reason, will always be there to pursue. The corporate ladder will always be there to climb, but the tiny, dimpled, perfect hands that were reaching out to me are no longer tiny. The dimples are long gone, and they are now semi-permanently stained with marker pens." And she talks about, well, her career has allowed her to have money and a stable home and food on the table. But she said, "Recently, when an opportunity presented itself to make a new choice, I picked him, the child. I picked stepping back, letting my ego take a hit and letting others perceive it however they wanted. If it meant he could look back on his childhood and remember that his mum was there, that was so much more important." And she concludes, "Being a parent isn't a thankless job at all. It's the best job I've ever had. I only wish I'd known it sooner." So there we are. A very good op-ed from a New Zealand Herald journalist. Now, the other big news, actually, I did notice this. I was laughing at this. So, obviously, Brooke Van Velden has been getting in a lot of trouble for the pay equity bill last week. And, of course, she won the Tamaki electorate over my colleague, Simon O'Connor. And one of the claims was that Simon O'Connor didn't like women because he was pro-life. No, well, Simon O'Connor loves women. He's married to one. And I know he loves and respects women. He just loves and respects unborn women as well, as we all do, those of us who accept science and biology. But here's Brooke Van Velden getting in trouble because of the woman's wave that she rode in Tamaki, and I don't think the wave anymore. It's turned into a little trickle. So I did have a chuckle about that particular one. Obviously, the big story over the weekend was that the government is stepping up the work on the media ban, the social media ban. Remember, ACT was the blocking point for it to be a government bill, so it was only New Zealand First and National that were doing it. ACT said no, they weren't going to support it. They just wanted an inquiry, a talkfest. And so the government has said no, they're going to make it a priority. The Minister of Education, Erica Stanford, is going to look into it. And it seemed, I think, reading behind what's being said, is that Labour have indicated that they will give it some support, and good on them as well. But I was interested on this article, the 2 Degrees CEO, who is in the Post today saying he supports a social media ban. He talks about depression, anxiety, self-esteem issues, sleep disruption and cyberbullying, and just some of the social impacts social media has. Talks about the research that says that social media may be more harmful due to heightened sensitivity to peer feedback for girls around 11 to 13 and boys around 14 to 15, which is true. He says naysayers have quickly suggested that the enforcement of any social media ban is impracticable. But this argument misses the wood for the trees. The reality is there are many rules across society that are incredibly difficult to enforce. But this alone doesn't negate the need for these guidelines. And of course, the example is the alcohol age. He says the rule itself sends a strong message that drinking can be harmful and that we should protect our kids from that harm while their minds are still growing. He says the bill sends a good message to parents. It tells them that they are right to be deeply concerned. He says it's telling parents that they aren't weirdos or Luddites for establishing rules that preclude their children from using social media before 16. And just one final point he makes, he says it may seem strange that the CEO of a telecommunications company to be arguing for customers to use their smartphones less. But we are the first to concede that not all use of phones is good for us. So a very good piece that is in the Post. Also in the news over the weekend, a polyamorous throuple won the right to put all 3 of their names on their children's birth certificates, but the Attorney General has rightly appealed the decision. They insist the appeal wasn't because of the family's sexual orientation. No, it's because of biology. A child has a biological mum and a dad. Quite simple. But this is the typical outcome of redefining marriage. Once you take away the requirement for number, then for gender, then you also take away the requirement for number, because it's all about human rights. And remember, love is love. So for this polyamorous throuple, so this child who is living with 3 parents who are in it together in more ways than one, and so the High Court at Hamilton has talked about the fact that this is really a parliamentary decision to allow more than 2 parents to be on the birth certificate. The fact of the matter is you can already have 2 people of the same sex on a birth certificate. In fact, you don't even have to put who the sex is, whether they're the mother or the father. They can just be the parent. So we're already starting to distort it, and this is just the slippery slope of how it's going to be pushed. And of course, the lawyer for the throuple said to deny them both being named as mothers on the birth certificate, so the 2 women who want to be the mothers, even though only one of them could be or can be, is to depending on whether there's surrogacy, of course, and then it gets really complicated and confusing. But to deny them, the lawyer said, to deny them both being named as mothers on the birth certificate is to discriminate against their exercise of right to be bisexual and concurrently have a heterosexual and a homosexual relationship. Okay, too much information there, but that's how dangerous it gets, and that's just part of our hedonistic society, isn't it? A report out of the UK that says that by having euthanasia you can actually save money. We've heard that argument in New Zealand, and we've also heard it in Canada. Groups opposed to assisted suicide said about this report that it ignores the increased vulnerability of individuals with mental health conditions or disabilities. And there was one bit that really concerned me. The estimated savings are based on the assumption that assisted death occurs 2 months into what otherwise would be a 6-month terminal illness. But the problem is that the word uncertain appears 36 times in the report. Yes, because prognosis and diagnosis is not an exact science. It's an estimation. And that's the danger with euthanasia around the whole 6 month. Interesting article on Saturday. Alcohol lobbyists are apparently dictating some of the policies that Health New Zealand are putting on their website. Apparently, references to the review of our safe drinking guidelines were removed. Safe drinking guidelines were removed from Health New Zealand website after an alcohol lobbyist complained to a manager with the Ministry of Health's Public Health Agency. Now, the manager, my eyes widened a little bit when I read this. It is Ross Bell. Name ring a bell? Pardon the pun. Ross Bell was the head of the Drug Foundation during the cannabis referendum. Remember those big front page ads, that big splurge of, $100,000 or something before the referendum spending period had actually begun? And here we have sort of working with the alcohol lobby. Remember what we said during the cannabis referendum? Big marijuana would be coming in. And wow, seems like there's some relationships there already. This story was in Radio New Zealand. Apparently a group of principals have said that they think that even the draft framework is too explicit for their pupils. They said that, what did they say? Explicit content on sexual attraction and healthy sexual activities needs to stay in a space where kids can really understand what that means, and we just feel that it's probably too early at primary education level. Well, hurrah to those principals. The adults are finally back in the room. Of course, the article then goes on and says, meanwhile, a group of University of Otago experts on sexuality education said the draft was a huge step backwards, as they would. And then, of course, the media rush off to sexual well-being Aotearoa. Now, sexual well-being Aotearoa is family planning. Family planning have rebranded themselves. There is so much negativity around that name, family planning, and of course they weren't about family planning, they were about aborting, killing the unborn child. Family planning are now called sexual well-being Aotearoa. Sounds so much lovelier, doesn't it? But they are still the same rotten organisation. So, yeah, interesting that the principals are speaking up. Gosh, the time is flying. Centrist had this report. They dug deep into the LGBT statistics out of the census. And, well, we've already covered this actually, that only 5% of New Zealand, actually it's 4.2%, I think it is, identify as LGBT plus, with transgender and non-binary making up just 0.7% of the population. But the interesting thing is that LGBT individuals are twice as likely to be unemployed, twice as likely to report having a disability, twice as likely to suffer from depression, and 1.5 times more likely to experience anxiety. It really does beg the question, which we ask around gender dysphoria as well, is if you deal with the comorbid disorders, does that actually solve some of the sexual and gender confusion? The other very interesting point is that 77% of the LGBT plus population is white. Yes, despite 67% of New Zealand's population being European. So it's disproportionately white. I mean, doesn't that cancel LGBT immediately as not being woke enough? Anyway, I'll leave that with you. The media were all over the appointment of the Pope, and we are going to discuss that tonight. But the editorial in the Herald said that apparently the Pope has the opportunity to heal the American divide. Yes, apparently the Pope is going to solve the American divide, whatever that is. Ignore the divide in Russia, Ukraine, or Pakistan, or India, or the Middle East. No, the Pope is going to deal with the America divide. Those are the theologians at the New Zealand Herald. The New Zealand Herald also printed this. Apparently, the Pope's going to push back against MAGA-style Christian ideology. Whatever that is, they can't define it, of course. And apparently, the Pope is no fan of Trump or his vice president because they disagreed on something. Memo to the media. I'm a big fan of my wife, but don't tell her we've disagreed on a few things. I know, shock horror. The other thing is Friday, Pink Shirt Day. It is LGBT Indoctrination Day. Check out the McBlog. especially if they're thinking of having pink shirt at your workplace or school. People need to know what the agenda is and what books and resources are being pushed onto young kids as part of Pink Shirt Day. A couple of other important announcements. Wow, the Forum on the Family speaker lineup has been announced, and it is a doozy. Dr. Miriam Grossman on transgender issues, Dawn Hawkins on pornography and exploitation, Israel and Maria Folau finally getting their chance to tell their side, Kiralee Smith on being a mum opposing dudes playing in women's soccer teams, Jeff Johnston about the LGBT agenda and how to push back with grace, and Amanda Ackman from Canada is going to be talking about euthanasia and the slippery slope in Canada. Simon O'Connor is celebrating a big morning tomorrow morning because it's his 50th episode of Solid Ground. So bacon and eggs at Simon's place. I will be there, Simon. Eggs over easy, and I like the bacon crispy. Tonight on Straight Talk, Ate, Brendan, Simon and Peter. And we will be discussing things like the social media ban. We'll also be discussing the media coverage of the Pope, the obsession with the Pope, because I've found it actually quite fascinating. Let's just check some of your comments that they have been pouring in. A lot of you watching this morning. What is it? Everybody up early. Dean says, I think some adults aren't mature enough for social media. Many would put me in that category. Same with me, Dean, as well. Simply Green says, experts are top, experts are top, experts all the way down. Simply Green, you know what an expert is. An X is a has-been and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So you don't want to be called an expert. And Kim says, it's easy, man. Womb man is woman. Womb man. Yeah, I like the play on that. And from just my Facebook page, Rosie said, I didn't have social media when I was a teenager and I survived. Actually, I think I heard you say that once before, Rosie, but it's dead right. Ivania says, every child should know where they get their genes from. This is in relation to the polyamorous throuple that we talked about. Every child should know who they get their genes from and who birthed them and carried them in the womb, mother, and who the dad, biological parents are. Yeah, exactly right. And a whole lot of good mornings. I think that's all the comments there. Okay, that's it. We're out of time. Have a great Monday, and join Simon tomorrow morning for the 50th. I'll be the one in the background eating the bacon and eggs. Have a great day.